Good morning, Queens, and good morning, author community of Queens County. This is Tom Gretsch. I run the Queens Chamber of Commerce. We're joined by Mike Figliola and Dan Scarpati, our two new authors for this brand new series. I was just explaining to the gents off camera about why I thought this was important. So the Queens Chamber has been around since dirt, right? 1911 we've been around, and we pride ourselves then and now on educate, advocate, and network. And in the ways we did that back in 1911 and the days we do it today are vastly different, but our core principles, our core values remain the same. We work really hard, and it's been a tough go of it the last number of months. And so in kind of a lighthearted way, in a positive way, I thought it would be fun to feature some authors who are writing about Queens or who are from Queens, right? So I joke that you could be living in Peoria, but if you have a book about Queens, you're welcome. And by the way, we've been overwhelmed by responses for folks that want to be on this series. For right now, we're going to do it once every 2 weeks for 30 minutes on Tuesdays at 11. If conditions permit and we're able to do more of them, we certainly will. So for those of you that are authors out there or know authors, please be sure to contact us at the Queens Chamber at info@queenschamber.org. Meg McCabe here is doing a great job of organizing this herding of the cats, so to speak. And we're just really, really happy to be able to showcase our authors that talk about Queens. A couple of quick stats. Queens is the fourth largest city in America, if a separate city, 2.4 million people, 300,000 over the age of 62. We pride ourselves on our diversity. That diversity is translated into a number of different languages, but it's translated the Queens Chamber of Commerce into now its most diverse board, most diverse membership, and most diverse employees, staff that we have. And I'm extremely proud of that. I wrote an op-ed post after Mayor Dinkins passed away just last week. And as a guy that grew up in New York City and working in the city during those tough days of Beam and Koch and then Dinkins and Giuliani and Bloomberg, I love what he said. I love what he said about the gorgeous mosaic of New York, all the bits and pieces of our city, all the bits and pieces that make us so special. Today, we have 175 different nationalities in Queens, living for the most part in peace and harmony. And we've proven that. We've proven our mettle over the last 8 months. And so we're just really excited about this program. So without further ado, I yabbered enough. I'm really happy to introduce, bear with me for 1 second, our first author, Mike Figliola, who wrote a book called The Slow Midnight on Cypress Avenue. Michael, welcome to the program, and consider yourself special as our very first guy doing this.
Tom, I'm beyond happy to be here. Thank you so much for including me and for hosting this forum for writers. I think it's so important, especially there's a ton of us here in Queens, so this is right up our alley.
I'm glad to hear it, man. I really am. So Mike, give us a little bit about, a snapshot of Mike Figliola, what makes you tick, your Queens connection, and then I want to get more into the book and the reason you wrote it. But tell us about yourself for a few moments.
Yeah, sure. I'm basically a lifelong Queens resident. I've been here basically my whole life. So is my family. It's a funny thing with Queens. A lot of folks emigrate sort of from Brooklyn to Queens, right? So my mom and dad are in Bushwick and the north side of Bedford Avenue over in Williamsburg, and their respective families. My dad's Italian, my mom's Irish and German, and they moved on over to Middle Village and Maspeth area of Queens and Ridgewood and that area, and they all settled in there. And then eventually through Grover Cleveland, my mom and dad met up and they got married, and here I am. So I'm very much a product of this borough, a New York experience, which fueled a lot of my book and what I was trying to capture. But I really, just before we get to that, I really do love this borough for a multitude of reasons. It's a melting pot of everything. There's so much to do. I mean, in terms of the cuisine, the nightlife, I hang out a lot in Forest Hills. I hang out a lot here in Maspeth and Middle Village, down even in Astoria, a lot of brunch places, a lot of good things to do. So the borough is very much a part of my blood. And this book was born out of that. So I'm a blue collar guy. My dad's a cop. My mom was a stay at home who worked from home, but took care of the kids. And I was close and had holidays like everyone else here. So I consider myself a Queensian. Even though I bounced around a little. I went to Brooklyn for a little while, but I came right back because I missed the year so much. But yeah,
so glad you smartened up and came back to Queens.
yeah. I lived in Sunnyside and Forest Hills and Maspeth and Middle Village and Regal Park and different parts here in Queens. So it's
One of
definitely
the
a
cool
Queen story
things,
for me.
one of the cool things about Queens that I like, and I married a Polish Italian gal from Greenpoint. They talk about they're from Brooklyn, right? Here in
Right.
Queens, we're from Woodside, we're from Forest Hills, we're from. So it's a very neighborhood focused thing.
Yeah.
And when I put this APB out seeking authors, the cover itself just attracted my attention. I'm over in that area a lot. Council member Robert Holden, and the guy that runs the Myrtle Avenue bid. Ted Renz and I are friends. We work really hard at the businesses. I spent a couple hours walking on Fresh Pond Road a few weeks ago.
Sure.
So Michael, tell us a little bit about the book and the genesis of it, and kind of what's it about. Why should folks go on Amazon and pick up a copy of it and buy it?
Well, my family, like I said, a lot of them settled into the Ridgewood area around Cypress Avenue and Fairview and Grandview and all those kind of area those avenues that are across there. And what I tried to do is capture an authentic New York and Queens experience, for that matter. This book are the stories of, and what I call the forgotten. When you kind of go past some of those places, you look around, you might pass by, you may not pay attention, but the people who live in those apartment buildings, those railroad apartments, those beautiful historic buildings over there, they have stories to tell. And there's Joe the milkman and Bill the butcher and Joe the cop. And I felt, everybody, when you think about New York, sometimes you only think about Broadway or Wall Street, right? And even in Queens, you may think of Fresh Meadows, where the Globe is, or Shea State, City Field. To me, though, the real people stories, what was important to me was to capture those folks that lived in Ridgewood and sort of slaved to the grind and hand to mouth and worked hard and got on the train every day and took the bus. And this book, like I was telling you earlier, is kind of a love letter to them and to my aunts and uncles and cousins and my mom and dad, who all came from that cut of life, which, at the end of the day, some people say, oh, well, that's a very New York story. I think it's an American story, because even though it may be Kansas City or St. Louis or Cleveland or a Rust Belt city, those stories can still be found there. It might be on a small scale. They may have a porch versus stoop. I write about stoops a lot, which, you Queens guys know about stoops. But they may have a porch, and that's their porch, and ours is stoop. I remember sitting out at night with my family, and I'm actually writing this in my follow-up book. When there was a blackout, we sat outside with the candles lit and spoke to our neighbors and talked about the gossip of the neighborhood and spent time together. And in ways, I hope this book encourages that to happen again. People to come out of their house, talk to your neighbor a little more, get to know the people around you, because Queens is that kind of borough. And this book, I tried to highlight that. Again, it's a little darker version of Queens, but at the same time, there's a lot of beauty in it, and that's Queens is a dissonance. It has these parks and cemeteries and beautiful places, and then it has a little more seedier places as well. But in the end, it all makes up the whole of Queens, which I think is a beautiful borough and county here.
Yeah, we don't want to make Queens, I don't think anyway, become a sterilized version of what Times Square has become, right? Times Square in Manhattan, yeah. Right? Listen, nobody wants three-card Monte and all the bad things that went along with that stuff, but there's something to be said for a rough kind of a tough exterior, but with a soft underbelly, right? I think Queens is all those things. I'm a huge Mets fan, and I talk about all the time of, we're the borough of underdogs, right? We always try harder. We always try to get there. The Mets, I got a 13-year-old son who told me one day, Dad, it's so hard to be a Mets fan. And when one of his buddies gave him grief about becoming a Yankee fan, he said, listen, no disrespect, but it's easy to be a Yankee fan, right? Yes. With 28 championships. And I love that attitude that he has as well, because we do work harder. I talk about with all those nationalities, nobody really fights that much because we're all too busy working, right? And I got the sense with the dad who's a cop and the mom is a stay-at-home raising a family, you guys kind of live that American dream at a certain point, right, Mike?
We did, and we still do now. We're still family oriented. Going back to your Mets, just before we get to that, Lenny Dykstra actually wrote a blurb for my book. Lenny Dykstra is the famous center fielder for the New York Mets in
Did he
1986.
really?
He did, yeah. And he's a friend and he's become a friend. And it's weird, in my professional life, I work in media, so I got to meet him through that, and we stayed friends through that. And he's the same cut as what you're talking about. He struggled. He still has his problems, but
Yep.
Lenny is they called it the guy Nails, right? Where he was as
Yeah.
hard as nose, kind of played as hard as he could, and really brought an authentic Queens, New York experience, in my opinion, to the field every day. And it was really a blessing to have him write a little something for my book. Again, as a Mets fan as well, a long-suffering Mets fan. And
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
I am cut from that cloth. My family still believes in those values and ideals, and I think the whole country should focus on that. Focus about family together, working hard, and at the same time, I think that what this book brings out to me is a sense of reality rather than glamour. I think that Queens is a real borough with real people, with who, some people live a different life, but also I think for the most part, you have a lot of blue collar folks here. And I hope this book speaks to them. And that was the message I was trying to get across.
I love it. I love it, Mike. It's great. Part of this process, I asked all the authors to not pay us anything. Listen, things are tough everywhere. I know plenty of artists and authors. They're not that they're starving necessarily, but I didn't want to ask any of you folks to, sponsor to be here, right? We can always find somebody else that might want to sponsor an event. My only true request was to make sure you blasted this thing on your own social media platforms, which wonderfully, Michael, you did. It helps our branding for the chamber in general. And frankly, it helps out you. We blasted it and turned to our 20,000 database of people and got a lot of excitement about this. And then we also asked for a copy of the book. So I appreciate you sending me the book. I've not yet read it cover to cover. I've read excerpts of it to prepare for this, but I look forward to doing that. In closing, tell me a little bit about, besides Amazon, which is the 800-pound gorilla for books, where have you seen it sold, and what are your thoughts about getting the book out there more?
Well, the thing that was important to me too, besides it's on Barnes and Noble, it's on Amazon, it's on all types of different, you can get on Target, Walmart. However, again, it's the book is Permuted Press, which is a division of Simon & Schuster. So I'm lucky, I'm blessed. I worked a long time to get to this point. It got here, but I tried to really get it into local bookstores too, because to me, more importantly, as much as I appreciate Amazon and Barnes and Noble and their reach, the local bookstores too. So there's a couple of Book Culture is one that you can find my book, and you can actually physically go into the store and find it in Queens, in Jackson Heights. There's Astoria Books has it as well. And I tried to get it into different places too. There's a place in Forest Hills too. It escapes my mind right now. But my Books in Willow or one of those, they said they bring it in. They brought it in too. So, what was important to me too, not just to have it in the conglomerates and the big shots, was to have it as a real look, walk in and pick it off the shelf and thumb through it a little bit and say, hey, I want to take this home with me and see where it takes me today. And I got to do that. And when I visited the store, I tell you, Tom, that was a huge thrill for me. As this is, these are the kind of things that are thrills to me, a local sort of thing, to just see my book a part of the community.
Yeah, working in the author community for a while in my past life at R.R. Donnelley and then at a company called Ex Libris, I know how these books become. It's like a birthing process, especially when you're not, as a guy, you may not understand the birthing process, but from what I hear, it's pretty much like that, right? So listen, Mike, thank you so much for being the inaugural. I look forward to doing more. One of the things I had hoped to do, we have our annual business expo every year at Citi Field. I hope and pray that we'll be able to do it this coming May again at Citi Field. And what I wanted to do, and frankly, the genesis for this online program was, my plan for last May was to offer a table for authors to come all day long and bring books and frankly sell their books there. So I'm hoping that we can do that come the spring of 2021. I'm not necessarily certain yet. I'm just worried about Steve Cohen making the team into a world-class operation, which I think he's gonna, right? From my mouth to God's ears, right? But he's done a great start so far. He's a generous man, done lots of the right things, but nonetheless, Mike, I'll see you around town, I hope, and stay well. Have an amazing end of the year, and thanks for being an author. I know it's a tough process, but thank you very much.
Hey, Tom, it's a dream come true for me. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday if I don't see you. And thanks again for hosting me again. You can get my book on Amazon. You can find it anywhere in the stores. And I don't know, I guess my thing's kind of blurry now, but yeah, you can find it around, and find me on social media and Twitter, Instagram,
Awesome.
all that. I'd love to connect with you all.
Thanks a million. Well,
Cool.
ladies and
You got
gentlemen,
it.
Mike Figliola, the Slow Midnight on Cypress Avenue. Thanks again, Mike. Be well.
You got it. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So, folks, up next, right now my screen is frozen. I'm not going to reset my computer, but my screen is frozen, so I can't see much. But as long as you can hear me, we're good, and you can hear our next guest. So, our next guest is an interesting character, and again, Queens is full of characters. I'm very happy to bring on board Daniel Scarpati, who's the author of Gofers, On the Front Lines of Film and Television, a very interesting book. And when we first put this thing out there, soliciting authors, Dan's a pretty darn good marketer. He sent me a link to a YouTube video he did, a short, sweet little vignette that got my attention and the attention of Meg, and really happy to have him. Dan Scarpati, tell us what's going on. How are you? And welcome.
Good to see you, Tom. It's such an honor and humbling experience to be here with Mike and other Queens authors who will be joining this in the future. You've said so much about Queens so far that it like Mike was saying, it's humbling to be a part of something that is the borough that you grew up in. I am a lifelong Queens resident. At the risk of being lambasted, I'm going to say that I was never a big sports fan, but when people would ask me what baseball team do you root for, I mean, the answer was always easy for me. It was the Mets, because the Mets are from Queens. That's it. It's just that simple. They would say, not the Yankees. No, it's the Mets. And the underdogs too. I'm always a fan of underdogs, as
awesome.
evident by my book, Gofers. It's all about underdogs. But a little bit of my backstory for you.
Yes,
I'm a lifelong Queensite, as I said, originally from Rockaway. I like to say Jamaica Bay when people ask me where I live in Queens, because from Rockaway up near Howard Beach, the new and old sides, a little bit of Broad Channel, but Jamaica Bay as a whole. I went to high school at Christ the King Regional High School in Middle Village. Before that, I was at Robert H. Goddard 202 Middle School down in Ozone Park. So all over, southern and middle Queens. In high school, I was studying broadcasting. I did musical theater. I worked with JP DeTroya over at the Fresh Pond Columbarium, just north of the high school.
JP's a great guy. He's a member of the chamber. Great guy.
That's right. I was very happy to hear about this through him, actually. So I have him to thank in part. I worked. One of my earliest writing pieces that was publicized was through JP, actually. And then right after high school, when I graduated, I interned. My first professional internship, best I can remember, was at the Queens Chronicle newspaper. Peter Mastromo Simone, the editor in chief. I had a lot of fun working there. And like I said, my first professional internship, writing and kind of getting the foundations of that. But all the while, something I've been interested in since I was a little kid, 5 years old, I think it was Jurassic Park, my first movie that I can recall in earliest memories. I was mesmerized by movies. So I'm trying to make movies this whole time and work on writing TV shows, writing scripts. And in my backyard, all the while, again, down in Jamaica Bay, I started making movies. At first, it was going on YouTube where you saw that little promo video. It was shared online on Facebook. And then it slowly grew to a point where I formed a production company, which I now work through, Passing Planes Productions, named after the planes that fly overhead here in Jamaica Bay. We'd always have to hold for the plane whenever it flew overhead because the sound would make things, not usable. So Passing Planes Productions, that's where it comes from. It has Queens roots.
I love it. So Dan, tell us about this. The website I got information about you on was Passing Planes. Is that correct?
That's the one, passingplanes.com. It's my production company.
Tell us more about
that,
the genesis of that website and what you do there.
Yeah, well, when I graduated college, which I went to Macaulay Honors College, another local institution, City University, and they have Queens College campus. Now, I will admit I went to the Brooklyn College campus, so that was one place where I deviated a little bit. But Macaulay, we would have events across all 5 boroughs. My mom is from the Bronx, dad's from Brooklyn, so I was always bouncing around a little bit. We are another local story of a family that kind of united in Queens at the end of it all. But yeah, I Passing Planes was something that right after I graduated college, I knew I wanted to take film and TV to another level. I wanted to work in that professionally. And I said, how do I do this? What do I do? A bunch of people recommended becoming a production assistant, which the book, if we didn't mention the title, Gofers, on the Front Lines of Film and Television, It's about my work as a production assistant with zero connections. You know, my dad comes from the world of dentistry. My mother was a religious education teacher, pretty far removed from Hollywood and, you know, knowing anybody who's on the sets of film and TV shows. So I started working as a production assistant, and I had to find my footing and get my foot in the doors of different sets. I started real local, working on other people's sets. And then as I did that on the weekends, I would do work through my own production company, Passing Planes. And if you were to go to the website, you'd see some examples of that. Some recent examples I've worked with, you know, local realtors and real estate agents, small businesses like the Fresh Pond Columbarium. Really interesting local. I've always tried to keep as local as I could be and be living proof that it is possible to take a big career that people think film, TV, Hollywood, lights, action, all that fun stuff. You could really make it happen in your own backyard and, you know, make a career out of it. And I've been doing all right, and I'm moving forward. And yeah, I still work through Passing Planes, producing videos for local businesses. My production assistant work lasted about a span of about 6 years. And that's what this book is really about. It's about how to find work and become a production assistant in this industry without any connections. And it's also all about the behind the scenes stories that happen along the way. I did a lot of work on sets here in Queens. I mean, we filmed everything from NBC's The Blacklist. There's so many shows. Madam Secretary is up in, it's up in Long Island City. There's so many different shows that are filmed right here in the borough of Queens, and of course the city of New York. And some of those stories are featured in the book. So different neighborhoods of Queens that I wouldn't have been exposed to when I was a kid down in Jamaica Bay, I got to visit through this work.
Tell us about, Dan, a couple of like the favorite parts of the book that you put together. Tell us a little bit about this, about the favorite parts. So folks out there that might want to grab it for the holidays might want to put it on their wish list or put it in their cart, wherever they buy the book.
Of course, it's. I will say that I went to great lengths, especially in recent times, given the, you know, the whole situation of the world that we're living in of this pandemic, when the industry, my film, TV, and of course authorship on a whole, I feel the creative industry is something that's still struggling to this day, and we'll all come back stronger than ever, I'm sure, but in good time. The book, I went to great lengths to balance behind the scenes stories, something that anybody who's interested in how film, television, commercials, anything from local, small, non-union projects to big, you know, major nationally syndicated television shows and studio feature films. If you're interested in how those are made, those kinds of stories are in there. You'll hear some of my experiences that I shared for the first time in this book. And it's also for people who are actually interested in, you know, joining this industry and working in it. Production assistant for people who are interested in breaking into the industry. Production assistant is a role that you can do at any age. I've worked with production assistants from every borough of the city, from almost every state. They come from all over the place to New York, of course, LA, and now Georgia are other large bases of work. But New York City, I've worked with production assistants who were younger than me, you know, 17, 18, just out of high school, all the way up to 60, 65, people who switched careers or retired from their first job and wanted to work on set. And production assistant is that position that can position you to break into the industry and go from there. So if you're interested in either of those spectrums, working or just behind the scenes stories, I think this book is for you.
You know, it's interesting, Dan. I was playing around on the internet, on the Amazon, and you know, there's got to be millions and millions of titles online and available for sale. But I'm proud to tell our audience and psych for you that your book is number 837 ranking for books about TV production and direction. So my hat's off to you for that. That's quite an accomplishment. This is your first book, correct?
This is my first book. I came from a world of writing screenplays. You know, I decided nonfiction would be the way to go for this. And it's the only nonfiction book. It's my first. It's the only one I've done so far. And having done it, I feel rejuvenated and very excited to get back to writing fiction for a change, writing screenplays. And on Amazon, where it was available the other day, I don't know if it held, but it was the #1 most pre-ordered when it came out in October for TV production, the ebook version, the Kindle ebook version. So I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it up there, you know, in high ranks. And it's very fresh. It did just come out at the end of October. So November has been my first month of really sharing it with the world. And like Mike said, I'm really trying to I'm trying to find some local bookstores that I have trouble finding them sometimes. I know of a few here or there, but it's authorship and being an author and, book selling are industries that are just like in that creative spectrum. They're a little bit struggling nowadays. And I'm encouraging anybody who's watching who is a local bookseller or is in the local author community or reader community to please reach out to Mike or myself. I'd love to connect with everyone.
That's great. That's a good FYI for me and for our team. We can figure out how many bookstores are around in Queens, and also let them and all of our aspiring and actual authors know who they are, where they are, and connect them all, because we truly pride ourselves on making the connections out there that can help both parties, right? So we're excited about that.
Absolutely.
What's next for Dan Scarpati? What do you want to be when you grow up? Have you figured all that stuff out yet or not?
I don't think there's going to come a day in my life where I'll know what I want to be when I grow up. Every day is some new journey, some new experience. Right now, the book just came out, and I'm in the middle of running my own marketing campaign. Just like you said, Tom, the world of being an author is something I came from a screenplay world, and it was all new for me. So I had to find my footing. I spent a year querying agents. I tried to go the traditional route. I had an agent, pitched it to houses. That didn't work out. And at the end, I said, you know what, just like I made movies in my own backyard, we're going to get this thing self-published. So we self-published it. And it is available, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Walmart, Kobo as an ebook, and the Google Play Store. We're 60% off this week for Cyber Week. I just had a lot of fun with it. So what's next? I'm keeping pushing this book. I work on my YouTube channel, which if you visit my site, passingplanes.com, you'll see all my social media links there, including YouTube. I'm going to be posting some stories from the book there where I'll read a few of my choice selections and favorite lessons that I learned. So feel free to subscribe.
Nice.
And I'm also working as a camera operator. Again, the industry, film and TV, it's been a bit slow to recover, but I'm happy to report that it is coming back in some capacity now. So other gigs popping up for me, and I'm keeping working on that aspect as well, camera operating.
That's great. So the self-publishing was Passing Planes Productions, or did you use a third party?
Passing Planes Productions is the imprint, but I actually went through Ingram Spark for a majority of the publishing, Ingram Spark and Amazon KDP, and that's how we were able to get it on some of the big box store sites, Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And then for local sites, I did set up. I was happy that Ingram allows a discount for local educational institutions, and I believe bookstores as well. So that's another reason why I'm very excited to contact local Queens and New York City bookstores and try to get it there. There is a sense of pride of knowing that we came from here. We're talking about the boroughs that we came from. There's stories about those boroughs in there. So why not share it with the locals, the people we grew up alongside?
Absolutely. I love to connect you, by the way, with the fine folks at Gina Argento and Broadway Stages, that company. They do so much work here in all the 5 boroughs, right? We think of ourselves as Queens centric, all kidding aside about Brooklyn and Staten Island. They're all of our partners. We're all New Yorkers, but Gina and her firm, Broadway Stages, has done a fantastic job of not only keeping it alive, but growing the production business here in New York City. And so if you don't know her, you ought to, and get your book in front of her. And I think she'd get a kick out of it, as well as some of her staff. But nonetheless,
I've emailed her a few times. I'm going to have to get in touch again. And Broadway's fantastic. It's a great example of, like you said, a local business film, TV production that makes it happen.
Absolutely. So Dan, we're almost out of time. Any passing thoughts on Gopher that you want to share with our audience before we let you go?
I'll say the biggest life lesson that I learned that anybody could translate to any industry is grow a thick skin. And I'm sure Mike got this on the streets of Cypress Ave. I'm sure you did. Anybody who grew up in New York City, grow a thick skin. That's a lesson that I learned is especially important in film and TV production. And especially nowadays, you live through the pandemic, you're going to grow a thick skin.
There's no question. Dan Scarpati, the author of Gofers, on the front lines of film and television. Dan, thank you so much for being part of our inaugural program. You and Mike are going to go down in history as our 2 first authors with book sales off the charts for this holiday season. Really, truly, thank you so much. It's
an honor to be here. Very happy. Thank you so much for hosting it and having us.
The honor is all mine, because, at the end of the day, you are the epitome of kind of a small business person doing this thing by your bootstraps and getting this thing out and available for sale. So my hat is off to you and to Mike as well. Have a great end of the year. Let's hope this book goes out, whether it's a Kindle or whether it's a printed hardcover or soft cover, in everybody's Christmas and Hanukkah stockings this year, and Kwanzaa bags, all that good stuff. So listen, take care. Dan, congratulations, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Tom. All my best to you and your team.
Thank you so much. So, folks, that wraps up our first segment, our first effort at this opportunity. Thank you so much for joining us. Two really interesting guys. Looking forward to our next one, which is in 2 weeks. Until then, you've got any comments or questions, you've got any concerns, you can always email us at info@queenschamber.org to get on the list for future author presentations. If you have questions about the chamber, if your business needs help, if you need anything business related or personally related to connect businesses with each other, don't be afraid to reach out. Our number is 718-898-8500. 718-898-8500. Until we meet again and we see each other again online, take care and be well. Thanks again for joining us.